and I'm excited to introduce our first speaker, who's going to be presenting about good news is on its way, success stories during the pandemic. And so today I'm going to introduce Loren Christie, who is the head of business development for North America at Bidroom. Loren has 25 years of experience in the hospitality industry, 15 of which he has been in leadership roles in hotels and with destination marketing organizations. He's creative, energetic, an enthusiast, and inspiring leader. So he's got many, many things to share with us today, and I'm honored to share the stage with you. So, Loren, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate it. I'm going to do a little tech trick here and try and share my screen because I do have a little bit of a presentation I'd like to share with you. So bear with me for 1 second. And there we go. So what we wanted to do with Bidroom starting off today, just because we're going to have a great number of speakers here talking about different innovations and things that are going on in the world. And there's been so much bad news for the last year that we really wanted to focus on some good news. And we thought it might be a nice way to kick it off, get us all in the right mood with some good news stories. Because it has been a bad year. And I think many of us have spent times on calls and webinars and Zooms and whatever else, listening to sobering statistics of job loss, loss of occupancies, revenues, closures, you name it. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, representing Bidroom for all of North America, and even here, it's a different tale of two countries when you look at the U.S. and Canada. Currently, I think that the thing that we have in common is that no business here in Canada or the U.S. is expecting a big surge in international travel this year. Both of us are hoping for some domestic travel, and the U.S. certainly with their vaccination rates has seen some really good uptake in domestic travel numbers, even just over the last few weeks. So that's really good signs. Canada, we're not as lucky. We have a slower rate here, and you can just see how that correlates. And we're slow to get off the ground and are looking at more closures versus less. But as I said, I don't want to focus on that. I would like to focus on some of the good news for the hotel industry. So I'm just going to give us a quick intro, talk a little bit about some of the big picture good news today, and then just tell 5 stories of hotels that I am absolutely loving that have just come onto the scene in the last year, whether it's a rebrand or a brand new opening or a reno. They've made it this far through COVID. They have every optimistic viewpoint moving forward in the recovery. And I reached out to those hotels and just said, if you were going to share a little piece of good news with people from all over the globe that are joining us today, what would the news be? What would the tip be or the lesson learned? And so hopefully, not only will we set you up to be feeling positive as we move into the rest of this presentation, but the goal is to have you feel like you might learn a little trick or two from some of these hotels that have made it or are making it through the storm as we speak. So in general, the good news, well, I think all of us have started looking through a new lens, and I think that is extremely valuable. We've taken a step back in the hotel and accommodations business to look at how we do our processes, our procedures, staffing, training, you name it. And one example, which I really love, and it's very apropos since I am here representing Bidroom, is we've seen the growth and the way of people looking at new ways of doing business. And specifically, I'm referring to the subscription model of business. Just yesterday, Skift put on a great conference looking at loyalty, membership, and subscription. Michael Ross, our CEO, was on there, and you'll hear from him later in this presentation. But Bidroom started looking at that new lens 5 years ago, and now people are just catching up to it. So it's very, very energizing and exciting to see people starting to think about things doing in a new way. I'd be remiss, and I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to anyone, to not to mention the revived view of sustainability and regenerative tourism. Happy Earth Day! It is Earth Day, so obviously we need to talk about that. Hotel companies around the world, I mean, this is not brand new. Let's not pretend that. We've been talking about the effect of travel on climate and the greening of hotels and the travel business for a long time. But I think there's a renewed energy and vigor toward it. I think we're moving away from just green labeling things and moving toward actual action plans. And I just literally 3 days ago got an update. Preferred Hotels, which represents 750 independent hotels around the world, they just took 27 of their hotels, resorts, and lodges that exemplify sustainability in action and rebranded it as a Beyond Green, as its own separate global portfolio. One small example of many hotel companies around the world that are really looking at that. So a fantastic, good news story, I believe, coming out of COVID. Another one, of course, is the renewed focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, you can't go more than a few days without hearing these words. Clearly, in the United States, it was a big day the other day when the Derek Chauvin was found guilty in the murder of George Floyd. That was huge for diversity, equity, inclusion, and the conversations that are happening in US, but around the world as well. Certainly here in Canada, we're having the same conversations. And I think in the travel business, what it matters is that, people are realizing that moving forward, not only do we have to make our guests feel that way, but we have to make our employees feel that way. People that have been suffering through the pandemic, we have to look at everyone through a new lens and be more inclusive all the way around. And from my point of view, particularly, I train in the LGBT plus market for the Canadian Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce here in Canada. And this year alone, they launched a new program on diversity and equity and inclusion, and looking also at a travel market ready specifically designed for the LGBT plus tourism market here in Canada. And we had over 1,000 businesses, tourism businesses, travel businesses, and destinations go through this training in the last year. So when else would people have taken the time to do that very important training and improve their workplaces for their employees, but also improve their guest experience? So really big and great news for us there. Also, just to bring it down to accommodations, not everybody has had bad news this year. Certainly in Canada and in the US, in the resort world, particularly those out in rural settings, have done fantastically well considering the model. We actually had in some of our resorts here in Canada record-breaking summers last year because people, domestic travelers who frequently didn't bother exploring their own backyard, decided to take the time to do it. So again, that's a good news story. Motels, they were in fashion back in the 60s and 70s, and then kind of went downhill. Well, motels are actually surging back in a big way, and COVID was part of that. Motel 6, the brand, very well-known motel brand in North America, Motel 6 in Canada last year had its highest revenue-producing year in decades. And a lot of that was comfortability, people not only rediscovering motels, but realizing that maybe they didn't want to deal with lobbies or elevators or whatnot in that particular case. So last summer, that was appealing. But in that, motels have reinvented themselves. And we have all these great examples, from the June motels in Ontario to the Zed motels in BC, which I'll talk about, turning retro chic and bringing motels back to being cool. And then lastly, the luxury market. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone. We've all now heard, I don't think anyone's not heard of revenge travel and people that are planning with all the money that they haven't spent this year, for those of the people that are lucky enough to be making money this year, that they're going to spend it on a dream trip, on a bucket list trip, and luxury spending. And luxury hotels and what that represents in terms of comfort and care have been at the forefront. And when you look at the hotel openings that are planned in the coming months, a lot of them fall under the luxury banner globally, and certainly in the United States and Canada for sure. So just a couple of things, to remember that, it's not all bad. There's been some really good things that are going to come out of this, and we should feel optimistic for the future. So I'd like to just talk about a couple of my favorites here in Canada, if you haven't heard, because it's fun to dream. The Camasoose Wilderness Resort in Desolation Sound in BC. It was bought just a year ago. It used to be called the Home Frey Lodge, and it's located in a very pristine area of the Sunshine Coast of our BC, in between the coastal mountain peaks and the lush temperate rainforests of the Sunshine Coast. It's an off-the-grid resort. So you can only get there by water. It caters to couples, nature and wildlife enthusiasts, photographers, food lovers, writers, painters, yogis, and travelers of all ages. It's a small resort. It only has 7 rooms and accommodate up to 26 guests. But it's it's a fantastic experience. And I think what's really cool about this particular resort is that it was purchased a year ago by the Camasoose First Nation Economic Development Corporation. And so the local chief and the First Nations that occupy the territory wanted to take control of the lodge itself, not only because they wanted to aid in the economic recovery of British Columbia and Canada and do their part, but they wanted to do it in a sustainable way. So again, nod to Earth Day, nod to my previous point. They have made it very clear that they will be reopening this lodge, scheduled for May 13th, in a very eco-friendly, sustainable way, and want to do it to prove that basically you can have a successful tourism business and be friendly to the environment. And so I asked them what the lesson was learned, and it is basically that. Chief Kevin Pacey with the Camasoose Nation said, you'd invest in tourism to have a bigger role in the management of the territory, to protect the environment with their sustainable tourism practices. And he just said, you can care deeply and contribute to the recovery of the tourism economy and still care deeply about the world. You can do both hand in hand. So this is a great example of a lodge that I think is going to get a lot of attention coming up this summer, once it is safe to travel again in BC. Next up, staying in BC. Sorry, bear with me. Staying in BC. Oops, sorry. We have the Versante Hotel. I'm going to go back 1 second. We have the Versante Hotel, and this is in Richmond, BC. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Richmond, Richmond is a suburb of Vancouver. It's sort of the area in between Vancouver and the airport. So everybody who's been to Vancouver, whether you knew it or not, you went through Richmond. Versante has delayed its opening. It was supposed to open previously, but through COVID, they hung on, but stayed in touch with their guests, and they are now going to be opening summer 2021, exact date to be determined, but they're hoping for July at this point. This is a beautiful 100-room boutique hotel. It's Richmond's only luxury boutique hotel. It's managed by the Opus Group out of Vancouver, but this is the first of its brand, and they have hopes, if it goes well, to expand it around the province, particularly over to Vancouver Island. What's really cool about this hotel, and I got a virtual tour of it, is they are celebrating Canadian artists and local art. And again, that whole drive towards support local, showcase local, be authentic is showcased in this hotel, which again are some themes that have come out of this year, I believe. And they do a great job showcasing that. They have a celebrity chef. They're also going to have some meeting rooms. So they are positive that at one point business events will come back as well. And the lesson here learned, I thought, was really great. I talked to A.B. Shaw, who's the director of sales there, and he just said transparency has never been so important. Communicate everything. And I think, I asked him, dug into that a little bit more. And I think the obvious things that he's talking about are the cleanliness and hygiene standards, which we now have to do. That, you got to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with your safety protocols, as we all grapple toward trying to find safety protocols that are the same and accepted across the board. But that's another topic for discussion. But communicate everything. Make sure that your guests and clients feel comfortable with what you're doing. But he also pointed out that, everyone we deal with, whether it's our clients, our guests, everybody that walks into the hotel, our suppliers, everybody's really sensitive. It's a time when nerves are raw and frayed, and business is business, but you have no idea what goes on at home. And what he said is he finds the people that they've had in the hotel, whether it's, as I said, guests or clients who are bringing business to the hotel, they want to know that you're taking care of your staff. They want to know that you have a heart. They want to know what your values are. And I think, it doesn't mean that there's a way that you have to be, but I think people want to know, what are you about? What's your authentic self, and as a building, as a company, as a brand, and what does that mean in terms of how you treat people at a time when, as I said, people are very sensitive. So really enjoyed that thought from him. He said, people want to know that they're part of your community and you're a part of theirs. But again, people don't know what you don't tell them. So again, communicate it and let people know what you're doing and how you're doing it. So great lesson from the Versante. Next hotel I'm excited about is a little bit of a different story. This is a hotel, it was a rebrand here in Toronto, but it's part of a very interesting large success story from 2020, which just blew my mind when it all went down. Sonesta started with under 100 hotels at the beginning of 2020. And as the year progressed, they ended up getting into an acquisition phase. And by the end of the year, they had grown to 1,200 hotels. And now they have properties throughout North America, globally as well, but predominantly in the United States. This property was the first in Canada to ever become a Royal Sonesta. It was formerly the Intercontinental en Bloor, and now it's the Sonesta Yorkville Toronto, or the Royal Sonesta Yorkville in Toronto, and it was reflagged in December of 2020, and it's actually still going through the final stages of acquisition. But it's exciting. It's exciting to have a new brand. It's exciting to have an ownership and a group, a management company that is breathing life and air and actually hiring at this time because they need a new team to fill up these 1,200 hotels and get the experiences that they hadn't had. And the lessons learned here, I don't know that it's going to be anything too mind breaking or blowing for people out there. I think we've all learned it, but the quicker you can adapt to local guidelines, the better. And the quicker you can be flexible with your offerings, the better. And the examples that the Director of Sales and Marketing, Sean Pearson, gave, who I believe is on the call today, was to say that they had to make everything contactless and they had to do it quick. So they had the waves in front of the front door. They had the elevators have to be done. They had contactless dining experiences in the suites. So all of that had to be done in order to adhere to the guidelines, but also be flexible and creative in order to get the business into the hotel. And he went on a range of things to say that, flexibility was, cancellations and attritions and things with clients for business events, but it was also being creative to get people in. And so the picture that you see here is their outdoor patio, which they had never used as dining options in areas, but they repurposed it and it looks stunning and it's amazing. And it was, right now we're a little bit in lockdown in Toronto, but it was a great success from last year in the summertime and hopes to be again this year. I'm going to switch to the other coast very quickly as I go into our last two hotels. The Muir in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada's East Coast. This is the newest boutique hotel in Halifax. It's part of the Marriott Autograph Collection. It is a stunning property. It has been part of a development on the historic Halifax waterfront that's been going on for a couple of years. And so there's been a lot of anticipation behind the opening of this hotel, which again was delayed because of COVID. They're now aiming for September 1st of this year. But talking to Catherine Bagnall's there, who's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing, it is going to be a signature in the city. It's right on the waterfront, as I said. It comes with its own yacht. It's got a spa. It's got amazing dining options, but it's got a lot of unique character too. And part of that character is that they are reflecting Nova Scotia, and I am a native Nova Scotian, so I kind of got what she was going with for that.
Sorry. I got 1 minute for you.
Yeah, that's great. I'm almost there. Reflecting native Nova Scotian decor and art in the offerings. And she gave a more tactical tip. Her tactical tip was hire the best renders and photographers who you can afford and who get the brand. With COVID, no one can actually see the product. They can't tour it and they can't touch it. So great tip there. My last hotel, and before I get cut off by Mr. Will here, is the Hotel Zed in Tofino. This is one of those motels I was talking about that redid it. They opened last August. And I'll just talk about, sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I will go back. I'm losing my time here. Sorry about that. What they talked about is they took a 1970s hotel, they turned it into a luxury swank motel. The Hotel Zed Tofino is a 10-minute walk to Canada's most famous beaches in Tofino, BC, and they have things like a psychic den, a retro games arcade, and a sunken living room, and the world's first bike-through lobby. But here's the advice, and I'll read it because I'm sorry I went too fast. Technology clearly was not my friend on that one. But I'd like to end with this lesson learned, and I think it's great for all of us. The best advice, and this comes from the Director of Sales and Marketing there, the best advice I could give someone trying to open a hotel or restaurant during a pandemic is to put your people first. It's easier to make these tough decisions if you're considering the impacts it'll have on your staff and your community. and you will know it will be the right decision if you take care of your people first. Plus, those are the people that'll stick with you when the pandemic is over, and hopefully you'll have a happy staff to welcome happy guests back when it's all done. So just a little bit of good news and optimism to get us started with this iMeet Hotel, and I will end it on that. Will, how did I do on time?
You did great, and I love the optimism, and I love the fact of highlighting community, people, and experiences. I think that's a big takeaway for me. I love seeing that hotels are becoming a community aspect point for the city and the destination more than just an international place to go for guests around the world. Yeah, so that's really positive. I love that. Thank you so much, Loren. You always bring such a good light to the industry, so I appreciate that so much. And yeah, I love the presentation. So thank you.